And then we looked back and then we saw somebody walking under this light towards our truck with a guitar case. It was Billy Strings. None of us knew him, or I didn't know him, and I didn't really know of him.
Hey folks, it's Mickey Abraham from Lessons with Marcel. I've got another interview video for you today. Very special guest, not only a great musician, but a great friend of mine. We go back many, many years before Facebook, before MySpace, and I'd like to introduce my friend Drew Matulich. What's up, Drew?
What's up, Mickey?
If some of you are thinking, I've seen Drew before, Drew toured with Billy Strings for a while and recorded with Billy Strings. And of course, our friendship goes way back when Billy Strings was a young lad.
He was probably already flat picking too by that point.
True that. We wouldn't have known because there was no internet.
No doubt.
You were an incredible player when I met you. You blew my mind with your guitar playing and your mandolin playing back then, almost, I'd say, over 20 years ago, it seems like now. I think it was maybe late 90s even. How did you get into playing bluegrass music and folk music originally? How was that introduced to you in your life?
Well, my dad is a banjo player, and he got into it, well, I guess in the early 70s. And by the time I came around in 78, he'd been playing banjo for a long time. So I grew up listening to bluegrass.
Here's the Flat and Scruggs Grand Ole Opry Show.
Bluegrass was really his thing, obviously Earl Scruggs. But he turned me on to all kinds of things like, rock and blues and some jazz. He was my first guitar teacher, and he did also play guitar. And the first song I ever learned to play was Pipeline. And I'd seen my dad play the banjo when I was a kid, and I would sit there and watch him play. But when you're a kid and you're watching like an adult, especially your dad, somebody you look up to, play a banjo and they have all this going on, and it's kind of like intimidating. It's like, oh, I wouldn't start there. It seemed like it was too hard to play as far as like learning to play then. But I also just loved all kinds of music, and I remember that tune he played, and the part that I wanted to learn first was the whole ticka 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 ticka. I thought that was so cool when I was a kid. So that's really the first thing I learned, was just the intro to Pipeline.
How long did it take for you to surpass your father's skill level and for you to take it even more seriously than him? At what age did that happen?
I would probably say high school. Like, I stopped playing sports and doing other things just to play guitar when I was about 13 or 14.
You're living in Asheville, North Carolina now, and I do know that you did meet Billy Strings at a jam session. How did that go down from you meeting him at the jam to you joining his band?
Yeah, around 2015, some friends of mine, we would all go down to the Bywater. Kind of an interesting place. So a bar, but it had this big yard, and you could walk out to the French Broad, and we would meet up there on Mondays. And when I say we, it was like 5 or 6 different people. Hey, can you meet Monday? Do you want to get up and play? And so we would go and meet in the Bywater parking lot and pick, and we'd hang out and just play tunes. And that was a thing we were doing on Mondays. Oh yeah, it was sort of late at night, and we were sitting there picking on the just near the bed of my truck. And then we looked back, and then we saw somebody walking under this light towards our truck with a guitar case. It was Billy Strings. None of us knew him, or I didn't know him, and I didn't really know of him. He had made some, progress in his career then with Don Julin, and I guess either they were in town or Billy was in town. I'm not really sure.
I was born in the Southland.
He came down there and met us. We picked for a long time. Everybody else kind of went home. I remember he was like, "Hey, well, what are you up to? And you want to pick some more and hang out?" And I was like, "Sure, man." So we went over to a friend of mine's house, just sat around in their living room, and he had his book of songs and different tunes. He was like, "Hey, man, I want you to you want to try some of my songs? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. You know, after that, he was like, you know, I'm starting a band next year. I wondered if you'd be interested in playing with me.
So you were literally his first mandolin player in that band.
Yeah.
There was no one else playing mandolin in the band before you.
Not to my knowledge. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, he lives in Nashville. It's not like there's any shortage of amazing musicians there. So, I guess officially, yeah, I guess I was his first mandolin player.
Some 20 years ago.
You mentioned that he had already had success with Don Julin. Billy was playing with Don Julin. But that band, when you were in the band, was when I feel like Billy's career really started skyrocketing and started really taking off. And what was it like to travel from festival to festival as the band was blowing up? Did it feel that way from the inside? Could you tell that something special was happening at that time?
You could tell there was a progression taking place. Obviously, just knowing Billy and then like performing with him and getting to be on stage with him. If you were in the band, you would be able to tell that like this dude's going places. Back then, I mean, we were touring really heavy, you know. So you're also just like drive 6 hours, play the gig, drive another 3 hours to cut off the travel time between that night and the next night. Try to get 6 hours of sleep, sometimes less, maybe more sometimes, and then drive again, hit the stage, and you're just over and over and over and over again. So you don't see the forest for the trees because you really don't have time to stop and really check that out, so to speak, I guess, in a way.
And along the way, you got to meet tons of players and play with a bunch of players because there was people, everyone from Sierra Hull to Brian Sutton to David Grisman. There's a clip of you playing EMD with the quintet. I love when you play a lick and Dog looks over and he's like, hey, man, that was a good lick. You can tell Dog was in approval.
Yeah, that was definitely, I wouldn't even say a bucket list item because I'd never dreamed that I would really ever get the chance to do that. That's definitely one of the greatest musical memories that I have. David Grisman if I had to put a percentage on it, is 80% of the reason I ever wanted to pick up a mandolin. He is the man.
Yeah, there was that one time that you and I had lunch with the quintet together, and I remember us being backstage between the two sets, and I had introduced you to David. We started picking backstage, and you started playing guitar, and then literally like the second set started, 10, 15 minutes late because they're backstage playing with you. And then I think even Grisman was like, said to Grant Gordy was in the band, and he's like, Grant, man, I think I found a new guitar player.
On the way for the first time when I was 3 years old, I'm a freeborn man.
So another question I have about playing with Billy is, in addition to meeting him and then joining his band and then touring around with him, you recorded the album Turmoil and Tinfoil, and you're playing mandolin all over that album. What was the process like for you to prepare to record an album like that? Did you are those solos at all composed? Did you practice them over and over again? How did you go about that process?
Yeah, that was pretty much just improvised.
Wow.
Yeah, so we recorded at Glenn Brown's studios in Lansing, Michigan. Glenn had done a lot of work with Green Sky and lots of other bands. It was really cool being able to spend time with him. I mean, Billy had the songs mostly finished by the time we got there, but I feel like it was really like a week before. And some of these tunes we had played through, but we hadn't spent a lot of time playing through them because at that time we were really just playing a couple of his originals and then all the rest were just bluegrass covers. We went in and we just kind of took what we were doing on stage and put it in the studio, and then I forget how many days we had. I mean, we had a week. I think it was like 5 days of studio time booked. There were constraints, so to speak. It's like we only had so much time to go back and do an edit on a break if like a note was not right or whatever. We were recording in January in Michigan.
So it was freezing.
I remember leaving the Haney's house, which is part of Billy's family, and I think I had on most of the clothes that I brought on tour. I think I had them on. I remember looking out the window, and it looked like the Hoth system in Empire Strikes Back when... I had my blanket, I had everything, and I was still like just chattering, teeth chattering. And I had hand warmers stuffed into my socks, and I still have a scar on my leg through where one like actually burned through. I just remember that my mandolin also, like, the action just went down. So we're running the heat, and I remember I was having some gear frustrations when we were recording that album. I couldn't get the buzz to go away out of certain frets and whatnot. But the track On the Line, I remember that day before I recorded my break on it, I actually had time to go into the other room, and I actually did kind of plot my course, so to speak. I didn't like have it all transcribed out. That's not really what I do.
And that leads to, we're talking mostly like just about your, career with Billy right now. But as far as a lesson goes and improvising, what you just said is a big deal. You and I are both not note for note players. We're not the kind of people to play anything the same twice, but I do feel that we have in common where we will plot the course. Like, I'll start an idea here, I'm going to do something out of this G position, maybe move it from this kind of scale to this kind of scale, end up here. That kind of thing, I think a lot of players, improvisation is not as, I'm making up every note as I go. It's more like you have plotted out your course, even though it comes out differently each time, and I'm glad to hear you mention that.
I guess part of me feels like the way it would come out if I just like plotted every step of that break, it might not come out as real sounding, but also there are certain things, certain tunes, and I might opt to write it out note for note. And if I find something that I really love and I know that that's what I want because it feels like it is the most effective and it sounds the best, I would definitely do that, and I definitely respect that approach.
We'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Now that you're, back in Asheville living full time, what has it been like to post Billy Strings universe?
It's been really awesome, man. I'm a father. That was a big part of my life, getting off the road. And I was very glad to be home I really enjoyed touring with Billy, and I really enjoyed spending my time with him. I got to know his family really well, but I don't think that I was ever going to be able to hold on and stay with where he was going. I had a year-old son when I left. That was definitely the hardest part, was not being able to see him. And in a lot of ways, I was really relieved to be home so that I could be home with him, and also to be here in Asheville and be with my friends. And, Asheville is historically a town that is like culturally people play bluegrass here and have for a really long time. And to get to play different styles and not to be stuck on the mandolin, which...
Oh, right, because you literally only played mandolin. Primarily, as far as I know, you think of yourself as a guitar player.
Oh, dude, 100%. I mean, I didn't even pick up the mandolin until I was like 23. I love the mandolin. It's not that I don't love the mandolin. Even towards the end of my time with Billy, I brought my guitar with me so that in the off time I could like record some tunes on my iPad and play some guitar. In addition to like trying to keep up with Billy Strings and chop mandolin, I was actually starting to have like elbow pain. Yeah, 18 minutes into Meet Me at the Creek, chopping behind that, dude, I thought my elbow was going to explode.
One thing you do in Asheville that I love, because every time I come to see you, we get to do the jam downtown. It seems to be something it's a very legendary bluegrass jam. How did you become the host of the Jack of the Wood Thursday Night Bluegrass Jam?
Well, I guess when I first got off the road with Billy, I kind of just like took some time off from like playing a lot. I started going back to the Bywater to pick with my friends. just like in the same way that I met Billy, I went back to the Bywater and started picking with my friends. And I knew the owner, or know the owner real well. And he and I were talking, and he had mentioned something about putting a jam together at the Bywater. I was actually thinking about that and interested in hosting the Bywater Bluegrass Jam every Sunday. That ended up being a lot of fun, and a lot of people would come out, and it was a really fun experience. The person that helped start the Jack of the Wood Bluegrass Jam 21 years ago, Deb Ryder, she was coming to the Bywater, and I knew Deb. She had been coming to the Bywater, and she would come out and hang out and play some tunes. And then I was playing one day, and she asked me, "Hey, you got a second to chat or whatever?" And I was like, "Of course," you know. So we went and sat on the front porch of the Bywater, and she told me that they were interested in changing up how they're doing the Bluegrass Jam, and they were looking for someone to help facilitate that and orchestrate that. And Deb was sort of the liaison for the owner of the Jack of the Wood. So she asked me if I'd be interested, and I said, I'd be interested. You know, I first came to Asheville to visit Lindsay Pruitt, and she took me to the Jack of the Wood one night. And I remember I had such a great time picking, and that especially musically stuck with me. And I think it played a big part in me wanting to move here. And like, I also just love the town. I love that it wasn't just music here. It's like you have artists of all walks of life here. And
it's a great gig. Every time I come to Asheville, I look forward to playing in the house band and then the jam afterwards. It's a great scene.
Right?
It's a great place to be.
It's so fun. And even at the Bywater, when I started doing the jam there, the first hour of the Bywater jam was always a host band, and then it was a jam. And I like that concept because it gives a musician the ability to not only be a part of a jam, but you do get a chance to perform.
I've heard many great players say that you're their favorite person to pick with. One of the reasons for that is you do like to make it about other people. You put the jam first, you put other people first. You're a great, the word sideman, I'm not sure if people like that word or use that word, but you're a great sideman. There's so many people that love to play with you. What's your approach when you go into those situations to be an in-demand sideman? Do you take that role very seriously?
Yeah, I do. I take it seriously for the music and out of respect for who's asking me to play. I try not to take myself too seriously. I love being a sideman. That's what I enjoy doing the most, because it allows me to not only just play with lots of different people and play a lot of different styles. It's also challenging. Yeah,
I like that answer a lot. It's very obvious when to see the bands you play with and playing with you that all those things are exactly right. You're more about the team, the band, the overall sound, always adding exactly what needs to that particular ensemble.
I try. I do my best.
This will all be edited out. Maybe if you grab your guitar, yeah. I'm just going to put this into the video at the end, and if Marcel can find a place, we'll see if it makes it in there. One of the things you do that's so interesting that I just wanted to see if you could demonstrate for the folks out there is that hybrid funk thing. Sometimes we're in the middle of playing classic flat picking tunes, and then out of nowhere you're coming out with this almost like funk bass. Could you demonstrate that a little bit? I guess to preface that, I got into hybrid, I guess what we call hybrid picking from Danny Gatton, who's a big influence on me. Let me give you a better one than that. Yeah, no worries.
You're going to have to edit that out, Marcel. that's some of it, I guess. It was always about accompanying somebody else. Like with that funk rhythm, a lot of that I developed from picking with you. Because when you would take a break, as opposed to me just going, I could be like, try to throw some bass counter rhythms, keep it going.
You also do some of the Travis style picking, like when you're doing songs like 9 Pound Hammer or Sitting on Top of the World.
I guess I got that through our friend Sam Passetti. To be upfront about that, I didn't really study fingerstyle guitar like dedicated fingerstyle guitar players, but so this was sort of the same thing, like with singing songs, like.
Where can folks find you if they want to actually keep up with where your gigs are and when you're touring? And
Facebook would definitely be the best place to do that. I'm getting better at Instagram, remembering to get on Instagram.
Yeah, old guys like us, we can't hardly keep up with that modern social media.
Yeah, I mean, aside from stuff like this, I'm trying not to look at a screen,
You're a real friend, you're a real true musician, and you're a true master of your craft.
Thank you, brother. Same.
We'll catch you soon, brother.
All right, my man.
Peace. That's incredible, man. I love that.
I don't know what that was, but I'll just...
I'm not even sure what that was.